Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Rosenberger.
Southern Illinois, huh? Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois. She claims the South, but she says Southern Illinois. You know, a lot of people may not understand me, so I want, for those of you who don't understand people from the South, here's the difference. In Boston, for example, they leave R's out of words. Phi and Pike and Chi. In the South, we add them back in, like Winder and Yeller. So that's how we do it. Listen, I very much appreciate you all being here and letting me come. What does it feel like to be a caregiver? It's like coming to a road and looking both ways and then getting hit by a plane. It comes at you in such an unexpected way, and it's a brutal journey. You really can't train for it, but you can receive help in it. And I want to spend a little bit of time today talking about that. And what does it feel like? What does it look like? What does help look like? I only have 15 minutes. Verna said you only have 15 minutes. I don't even get warmed up in 15 minutes, y'all. But one of the things I do with my radio show, and we're now we're the largest show for caregivers in the world, actually, because I'm the only syndicated radio program for the family caregiver. And we're on about 200 plus stations. And I have another thing called Your Caregiver Minute that's on close to 300 stations every day. And I'm on a mission to punch into that isolation that caregivers deal with. Caregivers suffer from 3 I's. If you get nothing else of what I say tonight, just remember these three things. We become isolated, we lose our independence, and we lose our identity. Ask a caregiver, how are you doing? And you'll hear things like, well, we just got home from the hospital, or she had a bad night, he's not doing too well. And you punch in a little bit more and say, no, how are you doing? And that's when the tears come. That's when the stammering starts. And I'm on a mission to help caregivers learn to find their voice. By the way, for a Southerner, I talk pretty fast, don't I? Look at her go, baby. I mean, she's like bringing in the runner into third base. Yeah. I'd like to see how you do that one. And so, I was doing an interview with AARP not too terribly long ago, and they asked me, said, a lot of people don't even identify as a caregiver. You know, how do you know if you're a caregiver? For whatever reason, that just struck me as funny. So I lapsed on my best Jeff Foxworthy, and I said, if you have a professional carpet cleaner on retainer, you're probably a caregiver. Well, they thought that was kind of funny, evidently more than y'all did. And tough crowd, I tell you. I'm doing okay this week, but last week. And so you and Jeff ought to do these things. And so we put together a PSA for them some years back, and I thought I'd give y'all at least a taste of what it feels like to be a caregiver. Is that all right with y'all tonight? I was supposed to have substance and entertainment. That's what I was told tonight. So I don't know, you decide which one is which. But if you've ever used neosporin as a verb, you're probably a caregiver. Hold still, baby. I got to neosporin this so we get to church on time. If more than 6 doctors send you Christmas cards every year, chances are you're a caregiver. If you're on a first-name basis with the hospital security guard, see you tomorrow, Earl. If you've ever hooked up your dog to your wife's wheelchair just to see if it would work, I have footage. If a hospital bed has never hampered your love life, 80 surgeries over 30 years, y'all. There ain't no use wasting a semi-private room. And since we're getting close to Thanksgiving here, if you've ever changed the dressing while cooking turkey with dressing. Oh, I have one more. If while at the grocery store, you're the one asking for a price check on suppositories, you're probably a caregiver. So this is the journey we have, and we've learned to laugh about it. We have a good time. Gracie she lives with some very serious realities. This car wreck messed her up pretty bad. And she's had 80 surgeries, but she's also had at least 80 to 100 smaller procedures. Just had one 2 days ago. And my son is with her tonight and tomorrow, and then I'll get on the plane early tomorrow morning and go back to her. But I am passionate about what I'm doing for fellow caregivers. But let me take you back to when she gave up her legs. She didn't lose them at the time of the wreck. She gave them up in the 90s. one in 91, the other in 95. And as a young mother, one after each child was born, and we didn't know if she'd be able to have children. The doctor said, if you guys are going to have children, you need to have them when you're young. So I went to her and I said, baby, the doctor says we got to. I mean, I got a prescription and everything. And I don't know if that's covered under Obamacare, but I bet it's covered under Clinton care. Yeah, we'll just keep that here, y'all. All right, let's just. So, I'd really. One time I was doing I was thinking Rhode Island, and I called her up on the phone. I did a video conference so the people could say hello to her. I thought about doing that tonight, but they didn't have somebody doing sign language. They actually had it on the screen, the text. So I was just being my normal stupid self, and I was looking at her. I said, "Baby, I got to go to work." And this is live in front of an audience, and I said, "Quit undressing me with your eyes." And she was like, rolling her eyes at me. Well, they were typing that up on the screen. Quit undressing me with your eyes. I thought, well, that's just embarrassing right there. But when she, after each child was born, she ended up giving up a leg. And so in 95 now, she's a double amputee, mother of two. And it was a little bit challenging. I mean, it's a scary place. And she wanted to start working out and getting a little bit back into shape. But she didn't want to go to the Y. She didn't want to go to public places where people, would stare at her. And there was a local Easterseals facility right there in our community at the time. And she went down there because people weren't going to treat her as, weird. They weren't going to stare at her. They made her feel welcome. They let her know that she was safe there. I knew she was safe there. And she felt it was a great environment for her to start regaining her independence, her dignity. And for me, I knew that she was going to be okay. They treated her with respect and kindness. And she was among family. She was among friends. That's what Easterseals does. That's what it did for me.
It's not from us.
And, of course, she's gotten much more comfortable with this as the years have gone by, and she's pretty goofy now. Gracie learned how to snow ski as a double amputee. But we were and Nancy loves this story. We were on the Today Show, and Kathy Lee Gifford's trying to be really cute with me, and she said, well, I guess you're not a leg man. And I looked at her and said, sure I am. She pops those suckers off every night and says, knock yourself out, big boy, I'm going to bed. And Kathy Lee her mouth just dropped open. And then this surgery she had earlier this year, we were wheeling her out. I was at Vanderbilt in Nashville, and there was a big elevator, and a lot of people were on it. And I'm wheeling her out, and they had to release a nerve on her arm. And she had her arm in a sling, and she wears her legs uncovered now. She doesn't wear a cosmetic covering on them, so they look kind of like the Terminator legs. Yeah, that's what I call her. And she's in the wheelchair, and I helped her get her dress back on, and she's got these robotic-looking legs sticking out from under her skirt. She's got her arm in a sling, and we're sitting in the elevator, and they're all staring at her. I mean, they weren't even being coy about it. They're just staring. And finally, I'd had enough, and I looked at all of them, and I said, worst hysterectomy ever. And they all just flinched. I mean, they didn't even know how to respond. And they just stared at her. She just kind of rolled her eyes at me. And as I'm wheeling it out, I said, she put up a fight, God love her. And I just wheeled her on off. We've learned to be goofy in the midst of this thing. You've got to have a sense of humor with this. You do this 32 years, if you ain't got a sense of humor. It wasn't always that way. There was a time, and I'm the crash test dummy of caregivers. I mean, if you can fail at it, I've failed at it. I've forgotten more mistakes than most people will ever make. But I've learned from these things. There was a time when I was really low and really discouraged, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who to call. And I went to a local mental health hospital there in Nashville. I thought, I'm losing my mind. Well, relatively speaking. And I walked in. I hadn't slept for days. I mean, I was truly coming apart. And this is just last week. No, I'm just kidding. And I walked in, and I just stood there, and they kind of looked at me kind of odd. And I'm thinking, well, this is a crazy hospital. I can't be the weirdest person who's ever come in here. And they said, are you lost? And I teared up a little bit, and I said, yeah, I think I am lost. And I said, do y'all take walk-ins? And they kind of looked at me kind of odd again. I thought, God, is that really, that's the weird question y'all get here? I mean, it was embarrassing. And they said, yeah, we take walk-ins. So they took my wallet, took my keys, took my blood pressure, took me back to a room, and they sent me in this room that looked like it'd seen better days. And this lady comes in as a counselor, and she sat down with me, and she just listened to me for about an hour and a half where I just kind of just let it all out. She just listened quietly, and she said, well, we can't keep you here because you're not crazy. And I said, can I get that in writing? Because there's some people that really want to see that. She said, nah, you're not crazy. You're burnt out. I can give you some names of some counselors that you can go and see. And I ended up doing that, but it didn't really help much. She said, I'd give you a book to read, but you're the guy to write it. And the last thing she said was, we've got box lunches we've been giving them out. We got one left, it's tuna fish. You want it? I said, yes, I do. I grew up with 4 brothers. I've never turned down a tuna fish sandwich, not even from a crazy hospital. And so I went out in the car and I had my tuna fish. I thought about getting a t-shirt that said I tried to have myself committed, and all I got was a tuna sandwich. And I went out there and I'm sitting in my car and I'm eating this sandwich and a bag of chips and an apple and a drink, soft drink. And I thought about what she said. I'd recommend a book for you to read, but you're the guy to write it. So I thought, what would I say to a caregiver? How do you help a caregiver? You're going to talk about health care? I mean, I've never lost an appeal with an insurance company. Not one time. Had 2 that the doctor stopped because it took too long, but once I get involved, we win them. It's not that complicated. Once you get it, you got it. It's one and done. They bring pardon the phrase going on around the public here, but they bring a knife to a fight. I take a calculator because math always wins, and I win an appeal. So I don't need to write a whole book on dealing with healthcare companies. Dealing with doctors, that's not that hard. I've been called Dr. Rosenberger a lot. I tell them I'm a cranial proctologist. Help people get their heads, well, never mind, y'all know what I mean. And so, I mean, once you got that, that's one and done. Give injections, change dressing, all the things that we do as caregivers, those things are one and done. Once you learn it, you've got it. What is the problem for caregivers? And we lose our independence, we become isolated, we lose our identity, we don't know who we are, we don't know where to go. We get in what I call the fog of caregivers, fear, obligation, and guilt. We don't know how this is going to go. We don't know what to do. We're scared. We're despairing. We don't know how to make good financial decisions sometimes because our hearts are a wreck. How many of you have ever watched somebody go into a seizure, a grand mal seizure? That's pretty rough, isn't it? How many of you ever watched somebody groan in agony for hours on end? It's pretty rough. What does that do to you? How does that mess with your mind? Because it does mess with your mind. Those of you who've done it understand it. You're not thinking about your job. You're not thinking about all these things. You're just thinking about, dear God, what am I going to do? That's the person that I'm trying to reach. That's the person that Easterseals is reaching. They give them a place where they can come where it's safe. All I do is point people to a place of safety where they can catch their breath, take a knee if they have to, and start developing healthy strategies. You're not going to get them to figure it all out if they're so busy running around spastically. I know. And we caregivers live in such fear about it. We always think it gets dark just before it gets darkest. That's the way we think. So I purpose my mind that I'm going to speak to that heart of that caregiver who is so troubled, who is so scared, who's lost themselves. Standing in a hospital room corner, night after night, having a meltdown in the hospital garage parking lot. Eating a tuna fish sandwich out front of a crazy hospital. I am not going to be the last person that does that. So I want to reach those folks. That's why I'm up here tonight with you all, because Easterseals wants to reach those folks. And you help them do it. I just wanted you to give one more face, because this is the face of a caregiver. You know, and I learned, I do study martial arts. I'm working on my 3rd degree black belt right now. When I got my black belt, y'all have heard of Shogun? I'm show enough. That's funny. Y'all should laugh louder. Worked all day on that joke. God love you. And I learned a lot of things from martial arts. It's a self-defense art that I do. But it's hard to defend that which you don't value. So many caregivers, they lose themselves and their self-esteem is just in the toilet. They don't value themselves. They don't see themselves as worthy. They see it's somebody else's life at their expense. And I said, no, it's not. I was getting requests tonight of what to speak about. One guy came up to me, I'm not going to mention any names, he's right up here. And he said, talk about boundaries. It's hard for caregivers to set boundaries. But I'm going to say this to you, no is a complete sentence. I don't have to argue with it. I got to do what is necessary. I had a lady call into my show, and she's taking care of her mother with dementia, and she's struggling. She's been sober for 6 years, and she said, my mother is just driving me crazy, and I think I'm going to start drinking again. But I can't make her happy. I said, her happiness is not your job. Not your job, not your gig. She can be happy, she can be sad, she can get happy in the same shoes she got sad in. Doesn't matter. Your sobriety is more important than her happiness, because if you lose that, she is really up a creek. And I helped her just see where the priority is. We deal with mentally ill caregivers. We deal with opioids. I have filled 7 figures worth of opioid prescriptions for my wife. She's never abused one pill, and yet she's taken so many of them over the years. And we finally have moved her into some different types of pain medication, but not one time did any doctor, did any pharmacist, did anybody ever say to me, dude, we're putting a lot of chemicals in your wife's body over a long period of time. You might want to get some help for yourself. Nobody said it to me. We're going to say that to people now. The mentally ill with their caregivers. You show me somebody's mentally ill, I'll show you a caregiver in their orbit that's really coming unglued. That kid in Florida that shot up that school at Parkland. How many times were the cops called out to the house? 39 times. Who called the cops? It's a caregiver. It's his mother. Did anybody ever go to her and say, he's messed up, he may not make it, but you have to? And it's not only a good idea, it's imperative that you get help for yourself. Because if you're out of the picture, what happens? And sure enough, 3 months after she died, he shoots up a school. Caregivers sometimes are the last line of defense between society and somebody who is really, really disturbed. Do we hear this on the news? Do we hear anybody saying this? Think about all the times you've heard the word opioid in the last 6 months. Did you hear anybody talk about the caregiver? That's what I do. That's what I'm on a mission to do. And this is what Easterseals is also reaching out to these caregivers. It's not just somebody taking care of somebody at Sunnyvale Nursing Home. It's not just a special needs child. It is an alcoholic, which is a chronic disease. You show me a chronic disease, I'll show you a caregiver. Anybody saying this? I'm saying it. And we're serious about it. If you want to help the family caregiver, this is what it looks like. And some of you in this room are dealing with these things right now. And if I look too close at you, we'll both start tearing up because we understand the pain. But this is our reality. It's not a bad life. It's a hard life. And it's harder when we're isolated. It's harder when we lose ourselves. And it's easier, more tolerable, we become stronger when we have somebody that helps us at a safe place to go. That's Easterseals. This is where you go. I didn't have that. Gracie had it by the time she needed it. I didn't have that for me. We're going to change that. You're going to change it tonight. You're helping this tonight. See, I like what Rosalind said, but I can even say it in two things. You love somebody, you'll be one. You live long enough, you'll need one. Healthy caregivers make better caregivers. Healthy caregivers make better caregivers. Let's help them get healthy. And it's not about feeling better, because we are never going to feel better than this. My wife is in pain all the time. She doesn't have legs. This is not going to change. She's not going to feel better about it. I'm not going to feel better about it, but we can be better while we do it. That's the goal, is to be better in it, to be stronger. And I've had to learn my place in this thing. I had to learn what is mine and what is not mine. That's the hardest thing I deal with as a caregiver. What is mine? What is not mine? I didn't do this to my wife, and I can't undo it. These parents of these special needs children, she didn't do it. This grandmother didn't do this to this child. A stroke. All these other things that happened. You didn't do this to your brother. Where are you, Don? There you are. You didn't do this. You can't undo it. That's not our job, is to fix it. We're stewards. I tell people, look down at your hands. If you don't see nail prints, this ain't yours to fix. I didn't do this to my wife. I can't undo it. That's not my job. My job is to care for her to the best of my abilities. And part of caring for her is caring for the one person standing between her and even worse disaster. If I go down, what happens to her? I'm not being selfish by taking care of myself financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically, professionally. You know that almost half of the 65 million caregivers are in the workforce? Did you know that $500 billion of unpaid labor goes on every year by family caregivers? That's the same as the trade deficit. $500 billion. The numbers are only going to grow. It's $80,000 a year if you want full-time care in Nashville, Tennessee, where I live. If you need full-time care in a nursing home, $80,000 a year for a single room. These numbers are not going to go away. And if you don't help a caregiver start planning, I love, by the way, where's the man that's running for office? Well, yeah, that's a little bit. There you are. I love that savings program. That's something we got to do. But it's hard to get people to even understand putting $25 in if they're coming apart, if the family's coming apart. I got a buddy of mine who's a neurologist at Vanderbilt. I said, what's the first question people ask when they get diagnosis of Alzheimer's? And the first thing the family does is, how are we going to pay for it? Families are coming apart. The divorce rate in couples with a disability, almost 90%. When is divorce a good financial move? Other than for lawyers? If you're a lawyer, don't take it personally. How do we help protect them? How do we help keep the family together? How do we help them get to a place where they can start building the family relationships? That's the best financial move you can make, is to protect the family relationship. Who's talking about this? We're talking about it tonight. And you're helping doing something about it by getting involved with what you're doing. My time is about up, and Vern's going to come up here. She's going to start hurting me. Now, I am almost a third-degree black belt, so you better bring some help. I'll go down fighting. I want you to know how much I appreciate just the opportunity to hang out with you tonight. This is something that's very dear to me. This is my mission. This is my passion. I'm going to find that 22-year-old version of myself, and I'm going to shepherd that young man and all the others like him. Say, son, here's what's coming down the pike, and we're going to get you ready for it. There are so many others that don't even know that help is available. Let's help them understand that. Let's help ask the right questions. Never, by the way, I'll leave you with this. Never ask a caregiver, let me know if there's something I can do to help you. Now I got to think of something for you to do. Don't do that. Just say, hey, I'm at the grocery store. You need some milk? Hey, when's the last time you saw your doctor? Can we sit with your loved one while you go get a physical? 72% of caregivers don't see their own doctor regularly. How is that a good thing? One of the landmines in my book, 7 Caregiver Landmines, is thinking that it's all up to me. It's not. It is not all up to me. I need help. Help is right here tonight. Help is on the way. There are a lot of people going to need it. Guess what? We're all going to need it. And let's strengthen each other. Let's be a part of this. I love what you said, Senator. Let's help. It's not that complicated. It doesn't even require big, effort on our part. Sometimes it requires a big check, but most of the time it requires just a heart to see the need. You can't tell me you didn't see this when you watch these videos. You cannot tell me that it's time to move. And I lobbied for this earlier with the Senator. I told him that the President had an 18-month plan with Health and Human Services to come up with a plan for caregivers. And we're about 5 months into it. And they better hurry because they're moving slow. We can't wait 18 months. We can't wait 18 days. We need help in 18 seconds. And 18 seconds says it is okay for a caregiver to get help. It's not only okay, it's imperative that they get help because they're standing between their loved one and even worse disaster. Healthy caregivers make better caregivers. That's my message to them. That's our message tonight. And I want you to know how much I appreciate you letting me come and spend some time with you tonight. Thank you very much.